Alright everybody, how you all doing? Hope you're having a good start to the week. I thought I would jump on and do a video about an American true crime case that I've kind of read stuff about. But before I get into all that, I'd like to say that I'm really excited to be invited to a live podcast in Cambridge next year. It was Big Ricky Killeen who asked me to come, and I'm really pleased about it. If any of you are watching this, and obviously if you haven't already checked out Ricky's channel, you should check it out, because it's probably, if you're into prison stories, as far as UK channels go, this is probably the best one that I've found. It's a good channel. So shout out to Ricky and shout out to Sean Atwood. He's hosting this. I'm sure Sean's hosting it. So check out his channel as well. His channel's a wee bit different. It's not just all true crime stories. There's like other stuff there about like the royal family and all that. It's no, the royal stuff about the royals isn't really my cup of tea, but if you're into it, you're into it. I suppose it's the same with true crime, it's not for everybody. Same with prison stories, it's not for everybody, you know. So when I was looking at the names of the people who are going to be speaking at this podcast, I was actually pretty like, what? I'm not going to lie, I nearly choked in my tea. So the one of them's Big Kevin Lane, right? I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him, but he served, say, 20 odd years of a life sentence. He's always protested his innocence, because obviously I've watched some podcasts he's been on, and he speaks and presents himself pretty well. He's a bit of a classy guy, if I'm honest. Tells it like it is, nae fucking about. Do you know, I like that, and people, there has to be more of that in today's world, if I'm honest. There's not enough of it. He was convicted of some guy was shot dead in a car or something. I don't know the whole ins and outs, but he was in all the catty jails, and I laughed, right, because one of his jail nicknames was Lights Out Lane, because I think he was just like knocking screws out and all that, because I think it's still a bit kind of different down the road, as we say up here. We call it down the road, England, right? Like, we don't run our jails like that anymore. I think, if I'm honest, I think the system up here just gets sick of the rioting and all that, and the screws getting took hostage and getting lunged or whatever. We say getting lunged, so basically getting your lung punctured with a sharp implement. So there's Big Kev, there's Peter Fury, who's the uncle of because I'm not gonna lie, I'd never heard of him, right? And then I googled him and I was like, holy shit, that's Tyson Fury's uncle, man. So it's his trainer as well. So must be be able to have a dash, you know. He was convicted of running a kind of money laundering and drugs empire. It's pretty high profile as it gets, do you know. And I've met people like that in Scotland. I'm not got to come on and speak about them, because they're either in prison or they're out and they're still active. So, because somebody had asked me to make a video about somebody, I can't remember who it was, and I was just like, no chance, mate. I know some of these people, for doing time. I wasn't involved with them like criminally out in the street, but obviously I know them for prison, and they're just, I don't want, it's too close to home, do you know. So there's Peter Fury, then there's Kenny Noy. Don't know if any of you have heard of him, but I've heard him. I've heard him. He was involved in a lot of stuff, like Brinks Mat, the gold bullion, all this shit, man. Do you know, he was a very high profile uh, crook, and obviously they say villains down there, like it's a I think that's a kind of, don't know if it's like an English thing or a London thing or what they call them, villains, faces, whatever you want to call them. That was the name. I was pretty shocked. I didn't even know he'd got out of prison. He was convicted of a road rage murder in, I think it was the year 2000. No, they're no people you want to go on the wrong side of, you know. Um, and the other name is a guy, is it Kenny Collins, who was involved or allegedly involved in the Hatton Garden case. Don't know if any of you have heard of that, but I have. I remember reading about it and thinking, what man, like it was a high end jewellery, jewel theft and all that. We're talking multi millions, man. We're talking about like the kind of they say, I don't know if they call it a score. We call it a turn. Say doing a turn, and if you done a turn like that and you got away with it, you'd be set for life. You'd be on a fucking beach in Saint Tropez or whatever, Monaco. You'd be set, but you're playing for high stakes with that shit, man. And I don't know, man, but that's what it is, innit? I'm sure that's all the names that I can remember. I think it's them. So Sean Atwood's hosting it. So there's Peter Fury, Kenny Noy, Kenny Collins, and Big Kev Lane. So I'll be excited. It'll just be like, it'll be like kind of when I went to meet Michael Franzese last year. It was just surreal. It just felt weird meeting a guy who I'd read about since the age of 10. Weird feeling, man. So it'll be a bit of a weird feeling maybe meeting some of these people as well, or just even hearing them talk and be like, what? But it's kind of, I suppose it's like when you go to jail and you meet Mr. X, who's like in the papers all the time, you know, crime lord Mr. X, and then you meet them in the jail and you just like, you know, not to fuck with them, but you know, but you watch your P's and Q's, but it's just like somebody, another bare arse in the shower sort of thing, you know, but so looking forward to it. So obviously yesterday I'd come on and spoke about the limbs in the lock case, which obviously is pretty. It was a very high profile case, and obviously reading that book and that. So I thought I would come on and talk about like more true crime stories, because obviously I'm kind of a wee bit well versed in a lot of it, either through being in prison or reading stuff. And this one was actually in the news again recently. Now, I'll show you the book that I read, right? It's called Inside the Mind of BTK, right? Who was a serial killer in Kansas, in America, right? Now, the guy who wrote this book is one of the pioneers of criminal profiling, as I explained before in a video that I wanted to kind of get into that. But you know what, man, I was reading that much about it, and as I said yesterday, when I was talking about the limbs and the lot, man, like, oh jeez, man, it's just like some cases it's almost like you're there, but I feel that way when I'm reading stuff and that, and horrendous shit. And this I remember when that guy actually got caught, that BTK serial killer, he actually got. So basically, if you've never heard of this case, right, you should maybe, there's documentaries and all that shit on YouTube you can watch and read about for yourself. Pretty scary shit. But he's a nonce, he's a beast. He would be no threat to you or me face to face, toe to toe. But if you're lying sleeping and he's coming through the window, you know what I mean? That's the type of threat he is. So basically, what happened was, obviously he's perverted, right? And he's started he started killing people, breaking into houses and waiting for people to come home and then tying them up and whatever. And he was just driving down the street one day and seen a woman coming out her house or taking her way into school, and just followed her, and then broke into the house, forced his way into the house, and the woman was there with her husband and her two of her small kids. She had five. They had 5 kids, but some of them had already left to go to school, and the 2 youngest were home. And just shit, man. Know what I mean? He's killed them and that. And he started writing letters to the media, like the newspapers, and we're talking 1970s, the mid 70s. This all started happening, right? So I wasn't even born. And he's actually got 10 victims, right? But obviously his first crime, what I mean by it wasn't his first crime, it's his first recorded crime. Recorded, I stress that word. And the first one that he done was the family of 4, so he committed a quadruple murder, like the first time he'd taken a life. Now, when I read that book by the FBI profiler, what was apparent was the kind of evolution of this guy, because he was taking notes and diarying, like blogging almost. We didn't have blogging back then, so he was writing in diaries and keeping notes and who he was stalking, what address they stayed at, where they went every Friday. Like, he was just meticulous note taking on potential victims. And the creepy thing is that at the height of the BTK hysteria back in Kansas in the mid 70s to 80s, he was an installer for an alarm company, ADT, pretty well known company, and he's installing alarms in people's houses, and these people were getting alarms because the BTK case was pretty high profile. Do you know what I mean? And imagine the kick he must have been getting, thinking, like, just off what. And he'd actually said how there was one person who, a female, who had rigged her alarm so that if he ever wanted to break in to get her, he could do it without setting that alarm off. Just creepy shit, man. But if if you're into kind of true crime stuff, maybe read that book. It's actually in depth and all that. But so what ended up happening was his last known killing was in 1991, right? And then he just went silent, like nobody had heard anything from him, because he was writing, as I said before, he was writing letters to the police and the news medias, and like basically what we call a malignant narcissist. He's like the worst type of narcissist you could ever come across in your life. Probably a very small percentage of the population, but just the guy's just evil beyond measure. And it's what I said in the video yesterday about the limbs in the lot. To me, in my opinion, there's only one way to deal with somebody like that, and it's not putting them in a cell. But Kansas didn't have the death penalty when he was committing these offences. They abolished it in I can't remember, 70s, something like that, I don't know. They reinstated it, but I think in 94. But he'd already stopped killing by then. But the weird thing is, right, see on the 30th anniversary of his first killing, right, the quadruple homicide, so we're talking 2004, that was the year I got sentenced to, April 2004. So I was going through trial for January right up to April. And I remember in Berlin, right, somebody had don't know if it was, know how you get maggot, well, I don't know if we're allowed them anymore, but people used to get magazines sent him, like a subscription, Nuts Magazine, GQ, whatever, right? Uh, and I remember, because I'd heard like bits and bobs about this case, like in true crime books growing up and that, right? Because this was unsolved, right? It was one of the biggest unsolved cases they had. And I remember seeing this big kind of article in a magazine, a lad's magazine, about the case, how this guy had resurfaced. Now, what ended up happening was there was a law professor in Wichita, Kansas, which is where this case happened, right? Wichita, Kansas. And this lawyer mentioned the case in one of his mock trial. So they do like a mock trial, whatever, and they mentioned that case, and he says, not one student in my class had heard of this case. He's like, I was like, what? None of yous have heard of this? Like, so he's ended up like doing so he's like, I need to write a book. The guy's name's Robert BTK. He's a law professor or something. He wrote a book, Nightmare in Wichita, about the case, right? And what happened was he ended up wanting to write this book because nobody had heard of it, and he was like, this is going to get lost to history. Like, this guy could still be out there, or somebody might have discovered a weird item at home and realise, like, they might put the pieces together if they have the facts. And funnily enough, the newspapers, the local newspapers, did a 30-year anniversary piece on the case, and Robert Beatty was interviewed for it, and the killer was reading this, right, and he sent photocopies of one of his victims who I think had previously no been linked to him, right, and it was Polaroids, it was like photocopied Polaroids, right, and the reporter said at first, I was like, what the hell is this? But then he says, somebody sent me crime scene photos, but then the guy next to him says, that's not a crime scene because the positioning of the woman's body had changed, and cops don't do that in a murder scene, change the body to look this way. That doesn't happen. They have to photograph everything and log everything, and as it is, they call it in situ in its original place. So if they say examining the body in situ, that's what they mean. I examined it where I found it. It wasn't touched, it wasn't moved, nothing. And they're like, holy shit, wonder if this is him. And turned out it was, because he started communicating again, right? So he's resurfaced and started sending stuff that they knew had to be this guy, because only the killer would have this stuff. It was creepy as fuck, if I'm honest, man. But they've ended up just ploughing all sorts of resources into it. The cops brought in the FBI, all this kind of stuff. It was on the TV every day, like running it every day in the papers, because they knew if we keep communicating with him, he's gonna fuck up. So what ended up happening was he's sending all these bits and bobs, like trophies as they're called in that world, like the trophies he took for his victims, like, so say a driver's license or a pair of socks, a bit of jewellery, whatever the fuck it is, right, he's took. And I think he was getting a bit bored, but tired of having to like, hang me write shit and all that, and he ended up saying in one of his messages, if I send you a floppy disk, could you trace it back to me, right? Now obviously this was when a floppy disk, it's like obsolete technology now, but back then it was like, that's how you saved your work. I remember using floppy disks in the IT class in shorts. But obviously, as I say, they're obsolete. This is 2004, 2005, right? So the cops are like, no, we can't trace it back to you. So he sent a floppy disk with something on it, right? And he saved it, which stamped his name and all that shit into the disc. So they've got the disc and fucking it came up saved by Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church. So they've went to Google Dennis Christ Lutheran Church, Wichita, Kansas. Boom, the pages came up, and his photo was on it. So because they didn't have his second name, but the funny thing is they had CCTV of where he'd left one of his packages, right? See, like one of his kind of like you can go and it was like something out of a movie. It's like creepy shit, like the killer's communicating with the cops and he's leaving mad cryptic clues for them and all this shit. And he had dumped one of these packages in a car park, yeah, fucking Home Depot, whatever it was. So they've checked the CCTV and they've seen him on the CCTV, but he was too far away to make out. But they could make out what kind of make a car he had. They had a Jeep Cherokee, right? So when they've put that floppy disk in and got the information for that, they've got his name, address, they've got everything by this point, right? So what they've done was drove past his house. There was a Jeep Cherokee parked in the outside the house, right? So obviously by this point they're like, we're onto this scumbag, know what I mean? And what's ended up happening is they got DNA for his daughter, a pap smear that was held on file in the university she attended. And when they've got the pap smear, they've obviously checked it against DNA left at the scene. Cause this guy's DNA wasn't on file because he was right undercover, you know. He wasn't like, wouldn't be like somebody like myself or somebody he'd never done a day in prison. So they've arrested him obviously and they're interrogating him and he's just ended up confessing to everything that he's done. It must have been, see to sit and listen to that, right? It's not like saying, oh, I was out drinking one night and then this guy looked at me across the bar, so I punched him and then he pulled a knife out and stabbed me and I got it off him and da. It's not like this type of thing, right? See to sit and listen to somebody who's killed children, who's killed innocent people, right? For their own gratification. That just, oh, you'd need a shower after talking to him. And my hat's off to them for that's what I said about Beggs yesterday, the limbs and the lot, like hats off to them for no breaking his jaw, man, like just punching his face in, you know, because somebody who's that kind of offender who takes human life because they find it stimulating, there's no reform for that. There's absolutely no hope. It's pretty scary shit. But imagine, right? The Look at everybody in your life, right, and think, who do I think would be least likely to be this guy? That would be him. Do you know? Like that's how unassuming they are. That's how good they are at blending in. Like apex psychopaths. Do you know what I mean? Just frightening shit. So this guy's been in prison for like, say 17, 18 years now, right? And oh, it was quite interesting because I saw it on the news on YouTube because I follow a lot of news channels, right? And what I'd seen was they were reinvestigating him because they feel that they've linked him to unsolved murders that weren't in Kansas, right? Now I'll go into them a wee. So suspected murders, because obviously I'm just looking at it online, you know. So on August 23rd, 2023, the Associated Press reported that Dennis Rader, that's BTK's real name in case you don't know, was considered the prime suspect in two further killings in Oklahoma and Missouri. Now that's interesting because I'm a geography buff, right? In Kansas borders those two states. So geographically, this guy was very mobile. He was a census taker. Imagine a census taker, and he's a serial killer. He's just going about houses. Who all lives here, and many of you stay here, and well, it's all their names. Like fucking hell, man. Do you know what I mean? If there was ever a job, you know what I mean? He must have loved it, but so authorities discovered possible trophies from victims after launching a search for evidence at his former Kansas home, resulting in the investigation of Rader's potential involvement in additional unsolved disappearances and murders. Now, I remember watching that in the news. They had dug up, see the house that he lived in when he was committing all these offences. He had like wee secret compartments and shit, and they've went back and searched it in the summer and found like knotted, they call it pantyhose, we call them tights, do you know, like knotted tights, and I don't know if they found DNA or shit on it, like female DNA or whatever. So the first one, right, 16-year-old Cynthia Dawn Kinney was last seen in Osage, Oklahoma on June 23rd, 1976 at the Osage laundromat. Now, his offending spree, well, I don't want to say offending spree because he was breaking and entering, he was stalking people before he began killing, so I'll say his murder spree, right? That started in 1974, so this is 2 years later, so um witnesses said she left the laundromat at 9:30 a.m. and got into a faded beige 1965 Plymouth Belvedere. Obviously, it's a make a motor. In 2023, Osage Sheriff Eddie Verdon claimed that Rader was identified as a prime suspect after it was determined that Rader was involved in Boy Scouts in the area, and when it was learned that Rader had included the phrase "bad wash day" in his writings. So he's obviously, it was this is what was freaky about this case, I know, right? He was involved in the Boy Scouts, he was a census taker, installing alarms in homes, um, he had a job as what they called a compliance officer, but it was just a nice way of calling him. It was like a dog catcher. Like he probably killed more animals than people, to be fair. Because it said that in that book as well. He used to see, like when he was gone without, like through periods without killing anybody. He was like, he would just get a dog off the street and just throw it in a furnace and turn the heat on and all that and just watch it and be like, should do that to him. Um, Animal. So this is where it gets interesting. A bank was also having new ADT alarms installed across the street from the laundromat when Kinney went missing. Rader was a regional installer for ADT at the time. Furthermore, Rader has allegedly claimed to have, quote, fantasized about kidnapping a girl from a laundromat. Rader has denied involvement in the murder, but Sheriff Verdon has stated he believes Rader's denial is because being tied to a murder in Oklahoma could open him up to retrial and the death penalty. So what you have here is you don't have definitive evidence that he's done this crime, but for a lot of serial killing cases that I've read about, there's always a victim they've no put their hands up to, right? There's a few of them I could name. Um, that's been my experience, and I've never like met any of them or bumped into them in prison or whatever you want to say, but obviously for studying my criminology stuff and reading about these people, you can kind of read between the lines, and trust me, there's always like these wee kind of cryptic links that don't seem obvious until they're put together, do you know? And I would say the fact that he's been journaling, right, and the fact that the ADT were installing alarms across the street for where this young lassie was last seen, to me that's more than a coincidence, do you know? Um, Definitely. I'm not saying he done it, but I'm saying there's more than enough suspicion there. Creepy shit. So the second one was 22-year-old Shauna Beth Garber, formerly known as Grace Doe, was found in McDonald County, Missouri on December the 2nd, 1990. An autopsy revealed she had been assaulted sexually, strangled and hogtied with 6 different types of cords about 2 months before her body was found. Garber went missing from Topeka, Kansas on November 3rd, and her remains were identified in 2021, so that's pretty recent. But she went missing in 1990. In 2023, authorities announced that Rader was the prime suspect in Shauna's murder due to photographic evidence found in one of his journals which tied him to the crime scene. Now that's pretty interesting. The one thing it got me was the sticky tape, rhyming slang for a certain offence, right? Because he'd never done this to any of his other victims. But the thing is, see with these type of people, there's always maybe when it all comes to light what they've done, and you go, but look at that crime, that just didn't look like it was him, like the pattern, the victimology, whatever. But there's always one that's maybe he just thought he would try it that time, whatever. Um, but as I say, I'm not saying it is him, but I would like to know what the photographic evidence is that they found in his the photographic evidence that they're saying they found in one of his journals which tied him to the crime scene. Um, I'm just going to look at the link just now and see if I can. Hold on. Hate tech. Right. Why police believe serial killer BTK could be behind 2 unsolved cases. Right. So this is a article by ABC in Australia, funnily enough. So Dennis Rader, the infamous serial killer known as BTK, who inspired both Stephen King and the Netflix series Mindhunter, has been named a prime suspect in at least 2 additional unsolved murders. So I don't know if any of you have got Netflix or watched Mindhunter, but see at the start of every episode there's a wee creepy guy with glasses and a moustache. This is him, right? This is this fool. Osage County police say they believe Rader's linked to the disappearance and murder of 2 women between the 1970s and 1990s. The new lead saw authorities dig near the killer's former Kansas property, finding items of interest. But I'm trying to find what they're saying they found in that journal. Cynthia Kinney was a 16-year-old cheerleader in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, who went missing in 1976. She was last seen at the Osage laundromat her aunt and uncle owned. Then they're mentioning getting into the car. After her disappearance, there were several reported sightings, but authorities were never able to find her. Um, so I'm looking at the distance. Pawhuska's a bit away from Wichita, but it's close enough. And I know he was definitely mobile, could drive, and was always driving all the state and roving out looking for prey. However, the case, which was investigated on and off over the years, was reopened in December last year. Osage County Sheriff Eddie Verdon told Cake TV a bank was having a new ADT alarm installed across the street from the laundromat when Miss Kinney went missing. Radar was a regional installer for ADT at the time, although the sheriff was not able to confirm that Radar installed the systems. That would have been a big help if they could figure it, obviously, you know. Uh, I can't really find what they're saying they found in this his journal. No, Raiders denied involvement in Miss Scarborough's death. Nah, right. Items of interest found in dig. So, where his property was, right? The house has been. It's not there anymore. It's been demolished, right? So it's just like a blank vacant lot in a street full of houses, right? Um. So basically, Sheriff Verdon told Cake TV some items were deeply buried. So obviously it's something that he's not wanted anybody to find. I would go as far as saying this has got to be connected to some case because why would they go through the trouble of burying it? Do you know what I mean? Um, Sheriff also said that some items were found during a previous excavation of the property in April, including a piece of aged, ripped pantyhose. It was very clear someone had created this hole and refilled it with a different material, took some precaution to kind of protect some of those items, Sheriff Verdon said. Um, and I don't know if any of you will know this, right, but BTK's daughter is actually pretty active on podcasts and social media and all this kind of stuff. And I think so it's showing you a tweet, right? See, like a tweet that she's come out and commented on when this all came out a couple of months ago, and she wrote, "Cops recover items of interest in new search of my dad, serial killer BTK's former Kansas property. I believe investigators were searching for trophies dad may have hidden." So this is what she said, and she's actually come out and said, if my dad has harmed somebody else, we need answers. And I kind of take my hat off to the lassie because if that was your dad and you came forward and you were talking about it, it's quite commendable because I don't know if I could do that, especially when he was admitting to the stuff that he'd done. But I think she's been diagnosed with PTSD and all that shit. 'Cause imagine somebody just chatting your door one day and saying, your dad's killed 10 people for shits and giggles, basically. Like, you'd be like, what, man? So, I have always said how a lot of the times, see people who commit crime, and I'm talking about myself as well, you end up making your own family victims because they have to go through trials and worrying about you and are you going to be alright in prison, whatever. So technically they're being victimised, like, and you don't even know you've done it. Do you know what I mean? And so you can only imagine what this lassie's going through. Um, Raider's daughter, Kerry Rawson, told Fox News that she believes investigators were looking for items Raider may have kept and buried on his property under a metal shed he built. Miss Rawson said she also told investigators to check where Raider buried the family dog. I'm still not 100% sure my dad did commit any more at this point, she told the Wichita Eagle. But if my dad's harmed somebody else, we need answers. So, doesn't sound like there's that much to link him to, but obviously it is a bit suspicious. Um, Especially the ADT link. I found that quite I found that quite telling. Do you know what I mean? There's just so happens to be that's his job, and he's well, they've no linked him to the area, but somebody goes missing, and you're writing about you want to abduct a lassie for a laundromat, but then a lassie goes missing for a laundromat. Your company's installing alarms across the street when you worked for them. Aye, right. Um, very, very, very strange case, man. Um, and it's just the most frightening thing for me is to think that see if he hadn't been caught in 2005, he would be out there right now living his life, just sitting in the house and retirement and all this shit, man, raising the grandkids. Frightening thought, man. And I'll come on and talk about many of these cases because there's actually another one that's no so well known that I was kind of using as for my degree. Um, Called the Golden State Killer. I'll come on and talk about that at some point. Interesting, but just maniac. Um, Scary stuff to think there's people like that. They're out, they can be out there walking the streets. Do you know what I mean? So I hope you like that. And as I said, looking forward to this thing in February with the boys. With Sean, Ricky, and got to hopefully get to meet a couple of the other guys. Got to be very interesting. I'm very excited about it and thankful that Ricky's offered to drive me. I've just got a train to Newcastle, meet him down there. Be good to meet him in person as well, do you know. No just see him on the telly. Um, I've never been to Newcastle, but uh, first time for everything. Life's happening, and I'm hoping that next year's going to be a even better year for me. This one's been a bit up and down with stuff in my personal life or whatever, but the main thing is I'm still here. I've no reoffended. I've got my kid, and just I don't want to say smashing my goals, but when you look at my life when I first got out compared to what it is now, I would say I'm all smashing my goals. Um, some of them I'm not even intending. It's just happening. It's just all happening now, and I really, really hope because 2024 is actually the 20-year anniversary when I got that 16-year sentence. So um, I'm hoping that it's got to be a very fruitful year with like doing this stuff and meeting new people, people that are right for me, and they're got to help me evolve as a person and all this kind of stuff. Because to be fair, like I still live in my old neighbourhood, my old scheme, and I don't really associate with a lot of people. Like it's not that I don't talk to anybody, I just don't kind of um. I wouldn't. It would just I live quite a solitary life. With my son, like I don't kind of go out and socialise, mix and all this kind of stuff. Do you know, I'm just trying to kind of because I need to make sure the people around me are the right people to be around me. Do you know, you just don't know what's going through some people's heads. um, so I hope you all enjoyed that. Bit longer than usual, but is what it is, innit? So hopefully I'll start be able to get people on to talk about their own experiences and all this kind of stuff as well. Um, so that's what I'm kind of looking forward to doing that as well. So hope yous are all good, and I'll see yous next time I'm on. Cheers.